They say pleasure is the reward, but what if it's the disguise? What if the chocolate, the scroll, the lust, the laugh are just shadows in costume, masking something ancient, something raw, something quietly aching? Let me ask you this. When was the last time you felt full without reaching for more? Not just satisfied, not just entertained, but still, deeply, profoundly untouched by craving. Because here's the truth. We live in an age drowning in pleasure, yet somehow we are starving. Carl Jung once warned, the very things we chase for comfort are often the ones keeping us from healing. And today you'll see pleasure in a way you've never seen it before. Let's begin. Imagine this. You wake up, you check your phone, you don't even know why. There's no joy, no urgency, but the habit, it's louder than hunger. A reel makes you smile for 3 seconds. You laugh, then forget it ever happened. Then another, and another. Somewhere in that endless scroll, the day disappears, but the ache, it stays. You put the phone down. Maybe reach for something sweet or salty or both. Then guilt arrives. You weren't hungry. You just needed something. And that something wasn't food. It wasn't dopamine either. It was silence. It was escape. It was a pause in the storm you've never had the words to describe. Let me show you how Jung saw it. He said, every person carries a shadow, a hidden self buried beneath distraction. And pleasure is the shovel. When you eat, not from hunger. When you scroll, not from curiosity. When you desire, not from love. You are not choosing joy. You are choosing anesthesia. Here's the painful truth. Most pleasure isn't pleasure. It's relief from self-awareness. But the cost is high, because every hit of false pleasure deepens the hunger for what's real. And when we can't find it, we feel broken. But we're not broken, we're unaware. Unaware that we've been trained to mistake escape for enjoyment. Unaware that the pleasure we seek isn't the cure, it's the symptom. Let me take you deeper. You're 6 years old, you cry, no one hears you. So you learn, feeling bad gets me nothing. But when I smile, when I perform, when I distract myself, people approve. And that reward, it sticks. So you repeat it for years, until adulthood, where your pain becomes quiet and your pleasures become loud. Louder than your loneliness, louder than your fear, louder than the child inside who only ever wanted to be held. But here's what most never realize. Pleasure remembers. Every time you use it to silence pain, you train your body to fear stillness. Stillness becomes unbearable, which is why you can't sit alone, why you need music in the shower, why silence feels like punishment. And Jung knew this. He saw how pleasure, when misused, becomes the enemy of the soul. Not because pleasure is wrong, but because we use it to run from what is real. The enemy is not pleasure, it's avoidance. Now, Arna, before we go further, I want you to do something. If this speaks to you, if you've ever felt that strange guilt after indulging in something that should have felt good, subscribe. Not just because it helps spread this message, but because you are not alone. And comment below, what moment hit you hardest so far? Because admitting it isn't weakness, it's strength. It's power to see what's been hidden. Now let me show you the trap. Imagine a person walking through a desert, chasing mirages. Each time, they run. Each time, it vanishes. But they don't stop. They believe the next one will be real. That's what pleasure becomes when it's hollow, when it has no purpose. Here's the irony. Real pleasure, the kind that nourishes the soul, it's quiet. It doesn't demand. It doesn't numb. It doesn't distract. It expands you. It's in a deep conversation. It's in finishing something you feared. It's in waking up and realizing you no longer need the thing that once controlled you. But we don't crave that kind because it's not easy. And yet, it's the only kind worth craving. Carl Jung once wrote, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And now you're starting to see why. And pleasure is the most beautiful absurdity we've ever invented. Let's keep going. Rewind. You're a child again. You fall, scrape your knee, it stings, you cry, and someone says, "Here, have a cookie, don't cry," or "Stop crying. Look, a cartoon's on." That moment stays with you, not consciously, but neurologically. Your brain learns. Pain equals punishment. Feeling equals weakness. And the solution? Pleasure. So you grow, and without knowing it, you become fluent in distraction. Pleasure becomes your translator. It speaks for you when you're too afraid to say, "I'm not okay." It dances when you're too tired to admit, "I'm empty." It smiles when all you want to do is scream. But here's what no one tells you. Every time you replace emotion with stimulation, you lose a little more intimacy with your true self. Carl Jung warned, when the inner world is ignored, the outer world becomes louder. And what is pleasure, if not the loudest thing in our lives? The scroll, the buzz, the ping, the binge. They scream, so we don't have to listen. But listen to what? To this, the ache beneath the noise, the need for meaning, the desire to belong, the wound of being unseen. You see, pleasure isn't bad. It's sacred when chosen with intention. But it becomes poison when it replaces presence. Let me ask you this. Have you ever felt guilty after pleasure? After watching one more episode? After texting someone you shouldn't have? After buying something you didn't need? After eating when you weren't even hungry? That guilt, it's not because you did something evil. It's because some deeper part of you knows you weren't fed. You just avoided the hunger. This is where most people misunderstand Jung. They think shadow work is about becoming darker, edgier. But that's shallow. Shadow work is looking at the moments you betray yourself for relief and saying, "I see you, and I choose truth over escape." Let me give you a story. There was a person who couldn't stop chasing relationships. They called themselves hopelessly romantic, but every relationship ended the same. Intensity, obsession, crash, repeat. And when asked why they couldn't stop, they said, "I just love love." But that wasn't true. What they loved was distraction, because when they were alone, the silence got too loud. They had never learned to sit with their wounds. So pleasure became the plaster until it couldn't hold anymore. And this story, it isn't rare. It's the hidden story of millions. People who confuse longing with love, scrolls with joy, numbing with healing. And the danger isn't that pleasure exists. The danger is never questioning why we need it. Here's the myth we need to break. Pleasure is not healing. Pleasure is not peace. Pleasure is not power. Pleasure is a tool. And tools, when misused, is become dangerous. Let's flip this around. Think of the last time you delayed gratification. You resisted that message, that craving, that click. And later, you felt proud, peaceful. Why? Because discipline isn't just control, it's self-trust. And trust is the real high. Because when you trust yourself, pleasure no longer owns you. You choose it, intentionally, fully, freely. That's when pleasure becomes beautiful again. Not a drug, not a chain, but a celebration. Now imagine this. You walk into a room, no noise, no phone, just you. And instead of panic, you feel home. Not because you have everything, but because you are everything. That is what Jung meant by individuation. Becoming whole, not through denial, not through grinding endlessly, but through integration. The ability to feel pleasure without using it as a bandage, the ability to enjoy silence without fearing it, the ability to be with yourself, and like who you're with. That's the goal. But you can't get there by chasing endless highs. You get there by lowering the volume of your distractions and listening to what they've been covering up. So, what does that look like? It looks like noticing when you reach for your phone and asking, "What am I avoiding?" It looks like letting yourself feel loneliness without patching it with sugar, with sex, with scrolling. It looks like choosing the slower pleasure, the one that takes effort, that demands presence, that waits and rewards you later. Because here's the hidden truth. Real pleasure isn't instant, it's earned. The best laugh, it's with someone you trust. The best meal? After a long day of meaningful effort, the best connection? After a conversation where you were seen, not just swiped. Let me give you a moment of pause. If this message has shaken something inside you, good. That's what awakening feels like. It's not grand, it's quiet, it's not dramatic, it's decisive, and the decision is simple. Will I keep numbing the ache with quick pleasures? Or will I meet myself, fully, bravely, without anesthesia? Carl Jung believed, our neuroses don't come from trauma itself, but from the refusal to confront what trauma left behind. And pleasure, when used unconsciously, ensures we never confront it. But now you see it. So, Hannah, what will you do? Let's go deeper. Here we are. You've heard the warnings. You've felt the tremors of recognition. You've watched the mask of pleasure begin to slip. Now comes the part no one wants to face. The truth that doesn't just sting, it shatters. Because to truly reclaim your life from false pleasure, you must admit something terrifying. You have betrayed yourself, not once, but quietly, daily, over time. Every time you reach for the fast fix. Every time you said, just 5 more minutes. Every time you avoided the silence because it whispered too loudly. Every time you told yourself, this makes me feel good, when really it just helped you forget. But listen closely. This isn't shame. It's awakening. You're not weak for doing what you thought kept you safe. You're not broken for craving something that dulled the ache. You were surviving. And now, you are ready to live. Because once you see the loop, once you realize that most pleasure was never joy, but sedation, you stop chasing the same things. The party doesn't hit the same. The scroll doesn't scratch the itch. The hookup doesn't fill the hole. The sugar doesn't soothe the scream. Because the real pain was never boredom. It was the absence of self. Let me paint this in a way you'll never forget. Imagine your life as a house, and inside lives your wounded child, your ignored truth, your unhealed memory. But instead of entering the house, you build an entertainment system outside. Music, lights, candy, comfort. You throw a party in the yard while your inner child waits unseen. That's what unchecked pleasure does. It builds a carnival outside your house, so you never go in. But healing, real healing, is walking through the silence, stepping inside, sitting with the child and saying, I'm here now. You can speak. That's the work Jung spoke of. He didn't want people to become addicted to stillness. He wanted them to become unafraid of it, to understand that silence isn't the absence of life. It's the presence of everything we've avoided. Now, here's the climax, the final myth that must be destroyed. You've been told that pleasure is the goal, that happiness means feeling good, that the more you indulge, the more free you are. But freedom isn't doing whatever you want. It's not needing to. True pleasure is not the chocolate, not the phone, not the ego stroke. True pleasure is the moment you realize you no longer need to be distracted from yourself. You can sit in the stillness and smile, not because it's empty, but because it's full, full of presence, full of truth, full of power. You become the kind of person who doesn't chase the high, because you already carry the peace. And people will notice. They'll say you've changed. You'll speak slower, pause longer, laugh less often, but deeper. They'll ask, why don't you drink as much? Why are you off social media? Why don't you text back right away? And you'll smile, because they won't understand. You're not avoiding anything anymore. You're simply present, and that scares people. Because when someone no longer needs pleasure to feel okay, they become powerful, uncontrollable, undistracted, unmanipulable. Pleasure no longer lures them. Marketing can't hypnotize them. Addictions lose their teeth because presence has returned. And presence is the purest form of rebellion. Carl Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And who you are is not a dopamine addict. You are not a bundle of cravings. You are not a consumer of feelings. You are a creator of meaning. And meaning is not always pleasurable. In fact, it rarely is. It's demanding. It's exhausting. It's inconvenient. but it is real, and it will feed you in ways pleasure never could. So the next time the craving hits, pause, not to fight it, not to shame it, but to ask, what do I truly need right now? That question alone can change your life because it breaks the loop. It hands you the pen. It reminds you, you are not your hunger. You are the one who chooses how to feed it. So let me leave you with this. You'll never look at pleasure the same again. Not because it's evil, but because now you see it clearly. You'll still laugh, still love, still enjoy the sweetness of life, but you'll do it with awareness. And that awareness, it will protect you. It will keep you from trading your peace for temporary comfort. It will make your joy sacred, your relationships cleaner, your habits stronger, and your silence golden. Because the pleasure you no longer need to chase is the only kind worth having.